Hi guys, Geechu64 here, and today is another Game of Thrones video. I thought that I'd be done with the Game of Thrones videos after the final season, but there are a couple videos that I do want to do before I do my final Game of Thrones video. This one will be character focused. So I'm just going to go through the characters and kind of see where they ended up. So to me, and I've said this on multiple other videos that I've done for Game of Thrones post episode 3, which is that the main problem with the final season is that the plot forces the characters to do things that they wouldn't normally do, and therefore it breaks immersion. So it's just a cycle. It's rush plot, bad writing, forcing the characters to do things that we don't buy into, which breaks our immersion into the world that we spent all this time on. So when the characters do things that we should be emotionally invested in, when they die, when they make character turns, when they make choices, we don't view them as the characters we know because we don't buy them as the characters that they're trying to portray. So, to me, that's the main problem with the final season. If you're interested in this video, well, you know what? We're talking about the characters. Hope you guys are ready for the truth.
Geek.
True. 64.
Geek. Truth.
Geek.
True.
64. Oh, shit.
As I said before, we're just going to go through the characters. I will either talk about how they either regressed, the character turns they made, whether they were wasted, or whether they were actually used appropriately. Because we got to give credit where credit's due. Not everything is completely terrible here in the final season. As I said before, the first 2 episodes I was totally on board with, and it was at the end of episode 3 when I realized, no, not so good. All right, let's open it up with Varys. So, Varys. He was not properly utilized. I thought that when they first started out, like I said in the first 2 episodes, he was talking about how Jon and Dany should get married and I'll solve a lot of issues. And I was like, hey, they're going to use Varys. Varys is going to do something, you know? Nope, he didn't really do anything. He turned on Daenerys for no real reason other than he just thought that she might go crazy. And found out Jon was Aegon and started writing all these notes to everybody and, you know, hey, he's the rightful heir. And then he gets burned and that's it. And we never see what happened with the notes ever again. So he died for nothing, basically. So Varys was completely wasted. Wasted character. Next up is Jorah. Jorah Mormont went out exactly how I expected and exactly how he wanted to and exactly how most of us thought he was going to. So he went out protecting Daenerys from the White Walkers. Exactly how I thought he'd go out. Great way for his character to go. So Jorah was handled correctly. Yes, thumbs up. Finally, you did something right, guys. Next up is Grey Worm. So Grey Worm, was he handled correctly? He's never had the most outstanding character. He was never the most outstanding character in the show. The way that he basically just turns into, you know, just an emotionless soldier at the end, I totally bought it because the whole thing is that he was that person for a majority of his life, and it was only Daenerys and Missandei that kind of made him a little bit more than that. When Missandei died, there was nothing really tying him to anything, and so him regressing, he was a regressed character. He was one of the characters that regressed back to before, but his actually made sense, and you could actually buy it. So Grey Worm, yeah, while he was regressed, I think he was handled pretty well. Missandei, on the other hand, she's completely wasted. She did nothing. She just looked uncomfortable at Winterfell because they tried to make it out to where they don't like, you know, outsiders, which is partially true. But those are the only scenes I think she was in. And then she ends up getting captured miraculously and getting killed. And she didn't do anything, and there was no real purpose to it other than to just try and make Daenerys angry so we could buy into her being the Mad Queen, which didn't work. And so she was wasted. I think she was a wasted character. In my early predictions, I said that she would live and Grey Worm would die. It ended up being the other way around, which would have been fine. I just didn't like the way that it went down in Missandei being... I just think she was wasted. I think she was a wasted character. Next up is Gilly. Does anybody care about Gilly? I mean, she's probably the least interesting character on Game of Thrones. And the only reason why anybody really cares about her is just because Sam cares about her. She was only in a couple scenes. She ended up being pregnant with Sam. You know, it's whatever. I said that she was going to die before she lived. I mean, was her character handled? It was fine. Nobody cares about Gilly. Let's just move on to Sam. Sam, I think he was wasted in a couple different areas, mainly because he previously, when Castle Black was being assaulted, he showed that he was not really a coward anymore. He really wasn't that character anymore. And he was willing to, he showed bravery. But, you know, his whole progression was that he became a braver person than what he was in season 1. When he was fighting the White Walkers, and it opens up the whole scene where he's like, you know, I'm not going to stay in the crypts. And then he gets the dragon glass and goes up to the front line, and Ed's there. And, it's almost like he regressed back to who he was in episode 1. Granted, White Walkers are a little bit different to deal with than the Wildlings, but still, I didn't really like it. It was kind of regressive. He was kind of crying. Ed died trying to save him. He keeps falling to the ground. It just seems like it was more like how he was in episode 1. Now, I didn't expect him to be some badass or anything, but to at least be a somewhat capable individual that's brave about what he's doing, that's not what we got. So he was regressed to a certain degree. It just seemed like a lot of what they tried to build up with him didn't really pay off. So I think if I had to say he was wasted, I'd probably say he was wasted. So let's go ahead and move on. Brienne had the best scene in the final season, which was her being knighted. I think that was probably the best character moment in the final season, I think. But what they did with her and Jaime was so dumb. Them getting together, it was whatever. I didn't necessarily buy it. But even if you did, just the way that they ended it with him taking off, and they get together in the same episode, they get together and then he leaves. And then you don't see her again till the end. And I liked how she was filling out the book for Jaime, but overall, Brienne wasn't wasted. She just wasn't really utilized all that much. So what they did with her was whatever. I could leave it, take it or leave it. Bran. Probably the most wasted character this season. He goes through his entire journey to become the three-eyed raven. He's marked by the Night King, and there's all this like history and lore and all this stuff going on. He has the power to warg into things. He can see the past and all this stuff, and none of it gets utilized at all. He's not even involved in the final battle, like in the long night. And then they just make him king at the end. And while I do agree with him being king based on the people who were in that circle at the time, there weren't a whole lot of options. It still seems kind of weird, especially the reasoning behind it. Anyway, I think Bran and his potential was just completely wasted, in my opinion. Next up is Sansa. Sansa becoming Queen of the North. Pretty much was what I would have guessed had happened. She was one of the smartest characters in the final season, but I still hated the whole idea where she hated Daenerys for really no reason, other than she just saw her as a threat. But again, Daenerys came up there to defend the North, and sacrificed her armies to do that. So I never bought into the reason why she treated Daenerys like such garbage. Her being Queen of the North, though, the way it actually ended, it was fine. I think Sansa was handled pretty well. It was fine. Arya, on the other hand, well, she got lots of moments to shine this season. She basically turned into the main character at some point in the final season. I think that she was wasted and that she never once used her face swapping abilities ever. Not once. They didn't even mention it. I'm pretty sure they just forgot it existed. But we didn't forget it existed. Why was that not used? I don't know. Arya basically took up half the long night by herself, dealt the finishing blow, was in King's Landing while 2012, the Mayan prophecy was happening, and just straight up destroying everything, and went with the Hound and was told, hey, you don't want to be like me. Vengeance is bad. And then she just instantly gives it up. I just didn't buy it. Her and the Hound being together could have been like really cool. It wasn't utilized. Nothing really happened from it. There was just that one line, and then she instantly gives up vengeance, which has been her entire character arc since the end of season 1, vengeance for her family. She just gives it up just because of one side conversation with the Hound. Didn't buy it. Dumb. All right, let's just move on to Davos. Davos survived. Very surprised about that. I guessed he was going to die, but he survived. Well, congratulations, Davos. He didn't get to do a whole lot here in the final season, so I really don't have a whole lot to say about Davos other than I'm surprised he lived. Good on Davos. Next up is the Red Woman. Yeah, the way that she was utilized was fine. I think it was good. I like that she basically disappeared and came back with some added abilities or something. I don't really know. She didn't display any of these abilities. You don't really know exactly why she came back, but you can extrapolate why it happened. The way she was utilized, I thought, was pretty good, and I like how she ended up dying, which is what she said was going to happen. So I think she was handled well. Next up is the Hound. So the Hound, again, the Hound just seems like he was just kind of there for most of the season. He didn't do a whole lot. And then whenever the long night happened, there's a fire and he just accepts he's going to die. I don't know necessarily I bought that, but it is what it is. And then the only other significant thing he did was go with Arya down there to King's Landing to fight the Mountain. And he fought the Mountain. Awesome scene. Visually, it was an awesome scene. They tried to make the Mountain more human-like, so that way it wasn't just him fighting a zombie. I didn't buy that either. But visually, Clegane Bowl was pretty solid. If you can just accept it as just a fight scene, that's cool. It was a cool fight scene. But just as a character ending, it just, I don't know. You didn't feel invested. It's the same thing with what I said before. When you're not immersed anymore, you don't really care when characters that you've liked and followed for years die because you just don't buy things that are happening. So, was he wasted? Not necessarily, but he wasn't really handled all that well, in my opinion, as most of the characters in this season were. Next up, we'll talk about Euron. I really don't even want to talk about Euron. He's the dumbest character in Game of Thrones. The dude's a straight-up cartoon villain. He reminds me of Dick Dastardly from the Wacky Racers. I'll put up a picture for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about. This was an older cartoon that I grew up watching, but yeah, Euron was stupid. I'm so glad he's dead. His fight with Jaime was so forced and uncomfortable. Went on forever. It was terrible, terrible stuff. I'm just glad Euron's dead. Was he handled correctly? No. His entire character through the entire show wasn't handled correctly. So here in the final season did nothing to change any of that. I'm so glad I don't see his stupid face anymore. And then Cersei, completely wasted. One of the most wasted characters in the final season. She did nothing but sleep with Euron, drink wine, sit on the throne and stare out windows. And then she died in some rubble. That was it. She didn't do anything. Man, completely wasted. One of the best villains in TV history, one of the best villains in Game of Thrones, just wasted. I can't say anything more about Cersei other than that she was wasted. Next up is Jaime. Was he wasted? It was worse than being wasted. He was regressed. He regressed back to who he was at the end of season 1. His entire character arc through the entire show has been that, yes, he's in love with Cersei, but he's an honorable man. Cersei is not honorable, and whenever he's with her, he becomes not honorable. So the further he gets away from her, the more honorable he becomes. And that's been his whole character arc. And when he left her at the end of last season, I thought that was it. That, you know, he broke that cycle. He's gone. He went to go defend the North. So he gets with Brienne, and then all of a sudden just decides, oh, I'm going to go back to Cersei now. I had some faith that the writers had something to do with this, that he was actually going back because he felt responsible for Cersei and knew the only way to really stop her was to kill her. And he had to take responsibility for the things that she was doing. So to end the war, just like he did before, he is the Kingslayer, he would have to take out Cersei. Not only is that not done, I'm still in love with her, bye. And then he dies. And there was a fight with Euron that nobody cared about. So yeah, wasted. Terrible. Jaime was in my top 5 favorite Game of Thrones characters. Completely wasted. Regressed back to season 1, which is the case for a lot of these characters. Tyrion. Let's talk about Tyrion. Tyrion was not regressed. I wish he was regressed because then he would be a smarter character. Pretty much in season 6 onward, Tyrion just consistently made dumb decisions. And it's like the writers didn't know how to write a smart character anymore. So, and you feel that. The only thing that made me still care about Tyrion all the way through, even the final episode, was Peter Dinklage's performance, because he is one of the best actors on the show by far. And Tyrion is my favorite character in Game of Thrones. So I still felt like there was some Tyrion in there, mainly because of Peter Dinklage. Definitely not because of the writing, because I feel like they didn't know how to write an intelligent character anymore. He was wasted. He was wasted in the final season, in my opinion. He just didn't do anything. He made Bran king. That's it, I guess. Yeah, I mean, he didn't do anything. So wasted. Tyrion was wasted. All right, let's talk about Theon. Theon was handled well. He went out pretty much exactly how I would have guessed. I hated that they completely fast forwarded through him saving Yara, because that happened in like a minute and a half. It was so weird to watch. I was like, wait, that's it? But his real redemption comes from when he goes back to Winterfell and he defends the Starks in Winterfell. The way he went out, good. He got redemption in the end. I liked the way Theon went out. He was handled well. And then the Mountain. Again, this comes back to what I said with the Hound and the Mountain. The Mountain has not been a character, but pretty much the whole show, but definitely was not a character once he became a zombie. So the whole idea that we're supposed to care about him and the Hound fighting, and then they try and make it to where, oh yeah, the Mountain's still in there. He still hates his brother. I just didn't buy it. And I don't care about the character, so it is what it is. Qyburn, on the other hand, Qyburn was used great because he just got murdered by the Mountain. It's one of the funniest scenes in the final season. So the way Qyburn went out, great. I love that. Who else we got to talk about? Tormont. Tormont was handled exactly how he has been, which is great. Tormont has been handled great. He still is consistent with his character. He has the funniest lines in the final season. And I just love Tormont. Who else do we got? Pod. Pod is handled well. He learns to fight. He fights in the long night. He survives. He sings a song. And Pod can sing. He gets with 2 women again. He becomes a Kingsguard at the end. Yeah, Pod, solid, dude. Like, you were handled correctly. Never a main character, always a side character or a behind-the-scenes character. He was utilized that way. Great. Pod was handled great. And Ed from the Night's Watch, he died defending Sam, who fell over. It just reminds me of that scene from the earlier season where Sam's crying because they left him. And he's like, we left you because you're fat and slow and we didn't want to die. So I felt bad that Ed was killed. And I'm adding this in post-production because I forgot to talk about Bronn because he was hardly in the season. I completely forgot he existed. Bronn finally gets his castle, and it's Highgarden, one of the richest. Man, Bronn Yeah, at least he got his castle. That's what I will say about Bran. At least he got his castle. The character was completely wasted in the final season, but hey, at least he got his castle. That's all I got to say about Bran. So that's majority of the character. I'm not going to talk about every single character. I think that's a majority of the ones. And that brings me to Daenerys and Jon. The most shafted characters in this season. I don't even know who to start with. We'll start with, they were both handled so terribly. Let's start with Jon. We're going to go with Jon first. So, Jon did absolutely nothing the entire final season. He fought some whites. He never once fought a White Walker. He never fought the Night King, which has been his entire arc. That was completely wasted. And then what else did he do? He rode on the back of a dragon in a storm that we couldn't see. And then all he did was just try and justify Daenerys' dumb actions at the end. And it took Tyrion to convince him to do what he needed to do, which was to kill Daenerys. Then he gets locked up and then sent back to the Wall, which is where he started at the beginning of the show. What? Seriously, he was the definition of character regression, because his whole character arc was about him being a reluctant leader. He was Aegon Targaryen. He had this thing with the White Walkers and the Night King. White Walkers and the Night King didn't pay off. He didn't do anything with them. Him being a reluctant leader, that led to nowhere. And then Aegon Targaryen, which has been the end cap for every season for the last couple seasons, has been Aegon Targaryen. He's Aegon Targaryen. And it comes out to light in the final season, and it doesn't even matter. What did it actually affect? Absolutely nothing. It made Varys write some notes, and it made Dany feel threatened. That was it. Completely wasted. Completely wasted. And he's just back up north. Granted, he would rather be there. I mean, he doesn't want to deal with all the politics and stuff, which was been his character, which is that he doesn't want to be a leader. But the show built it up to where he would have to be a reluctant leader. People just generally respect him and will follow him. That wasn't used. Aegon Targaryen wasn't used. His White Walkers and Night King were not used. So the three main things that formed his entire character arc were thrown out the window. And all he did was stand around and say, "My queen, it's my queen." And that's it the whole time. And then he ends up back at the Wall. That's it. So Jon, completely shafted. Jon was irritated. I don't know. I can't tell whose character was murdered more, Jon or Daenerys. Because they're pretty much right on point. Daenerys. How was Daenerys ruined? Daenerys was ruined in episode 5, The Bells, when she turned into a psycho robot Terminator killer who went around King's Landing for 35 minutes just murdering men, women, and children. You don't buy that for even a second. Even a second. What happened to make her want to do that? Two of her dragons had died. Jorah died. Missandei died. People were betraying her. Her being depressed, I buy. Her being angry, I buy. Her just straight up going to the Red Keep and just blasting it to pieces and people, below it being crushed, and as a result of it, I would buy. I don't buy bells ring. The whole city they've already surrendered, and we're just gonna flame everybody. Flame on, Human Torch, everybody, you're all dead. You're all dead. I didn't buy that for a second. Her character died in that moment. Anything that she did from that point to her dying, which was not a whole lot because she died in the first 10, 15 minutes of the next episode, I didn't care. That character was not Daenerys. I don't know who that character was. Again, if they had a couple seasons to build up her going Mad Queen and her doing that, that would have been one of the greatest, hero to villain falls in television history. But we didn't get that because D&D are lazy writers here in the final season. And they just want to get on to Star Wars, I guess, because they just didn't care anymore. So Daenerys becoming that person, yeah, that was a major character turn that we didn't buy. just terrible. Overall, all these characters were completely ruined for the most part. I just didn't buy anything that was happening with them. Characters died and you didn't care. Characters you followed for years and cared about, they died. They turned into psychos. They did all kinds of weirdo stuff, and you don't buy any of it because you're not immersed, and you don't buy it because of bad writing. Everything's rushed. The plot forces the characters to do things they wouldn't do, and therefore you're not immersed. That's the main problem with this final season. So that's it for my character assessment here. Obviously, I didn't go into too much depth. I'm missing tons of stuff, and that's fine. This is just kind of a slight overview and thoughts of some of these characters. There's a lot more problems than what I covered, and you know, I just kind of want to see what your guys' thoughts are on some of these characters, and see if I'm even in the ballpark and what everybody else is thinking. But I also want to thank everyone for watching this video. I want to thank all new subscribers who subscribe because of my Game of Thrones videos. As I said, I do have a couple more in the works. I don't want to stick on Game of Thrones too long because, you know, I really just want the wound to heal over. I want to move on past it and try and remember the good times with Game of Thrones. So the final season I can hopefully move into memory, but not quite yet. Not quite yet. Again, thank you guys for watching this video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm Geechu64, and I'll always tell you the truth.